with Renee.
Yo. We wait all week and all day for more. Saturdays with Renee.
Yes. What's up, world? Welcome to episode 93 of Saturdays with Renee.
I know.
Featuring
Mtume,
Renee
I agree
Johnson.
with the eyebrows. I'm always surprised when he says the number.
But y'all that close to 100 though. That's really why I
know.
raised. Y'all about to hit triple digits and you can't go back.
About to hit syndication. Syndication numbers. That's youngins don't get that joke. Youngins don't get that joke. That's for old heads only. But welcome everybody as we have part 2 of our discussion started yesterday on Millennials Are Killing Capitalism about how to read Donald Duck, featuring Geechee and Mtume. Jared Ware is here from Millennials. As everybody's coming on in, please do like, share, subscribe, support the platform. Make sure, I did not put it there yet, but the link to the show from yesterday will be in the show description. So if you missed it, go back and watch it. And yeah, so good morning. Good to see everybody. Greetings.
Good morning. And I really have to say for people, if you weren't able to watch yesterday, we're not going back. So you may have to just follow along with some stuff until you can make sense of it later and then go back and watch. Or you can watch this later and go watch that now instead, so that you can
either way, yeah,
keep yourself on top of it. You know what I'm saying?
But there's too much. We don't have time for the overlap, too much overlap. So you will have to go back. So if you missed it or whichever. So yeah. Good to see everybody. And real quick, I hate on them so much. Let me say a slight salute to StreamYard. I feel like they're trying with the studio layout. I think they're trying to hear us a little bit. A little bit of a salute, little bit, like a salute. But yeah. Okay, how should we proceed? Good to see everybody. Like I said, I'm very amped, so that's why
So, all right. So, I really would like to kind of look at Disney now, right? And I don't know, before we do that, I don't know if there was anything I know we didn't get to everything. So I don't want to jump to now if there's something very pressing from yesterday that we missed that we need to get to before we go into the current Disney. Because the current Disney, I've discovered, is very oof. Like all the things that I thought were oh, well, maybe this was a move. When I really start looking at it, I'm like, okay, it's not. It's not actually a move. So, but I want to make sure that, before we move to that space, is there anything we missed yesterday or that folks really wanted to make sure we got in yesterday that we didn't get in?
You mean from the entire book?
No, Jared is always so well prepared, not you. J-Dub.
Oh, I know. Everybody was clear which one you were talking about. I was already nodding in agreement. Not me.
So there were notes and stuff. And so I wanted to make sure, I want to check to make sure that there was nothing that we absolutely didn't cover that should have been raised before we go to this next step.
Well, I think that there's a bridge between yesterday and today, which is sort of obviously there's this racist, colonialist, imperialist history and this ideology that's promoted that we talked a lot about yesterday. And part of what has happened in recent years is an attempt to try to figure out by Disney, an attempt to try to figure out how to move forward from that history, as people point out from the past, like all of the racist crap that's in their movies, their cartoons, et cetera, right? And so, like 2020, 2021 is this period at which they take on these big diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives that include um, putting uh, putting little disclaimers basically before their movies. They started a little bit more general, like some of this stuff might be kind of stereotypical and problematic for the time, etc. And then it shifted post George Floyd to more of a like some of these depictions are wrong now and they were wrong then too, basically. And then now that we have, the other Donald back in office, they have walked a lot of that back and abandoned a lot of their DEI programming for a corporation, but also moved those descriptions, like softened them a little bit again, and then put them in mostly either as a quick slide before a movie starts, or to just like the kind of show description you would see on Disney Plus, where there's a little bit of a disclaimer. Um, but alongside that, like they also changed rides at Disneyland and Disney World, which we could talk about a little bit today. You know, they have a way to, and Mtume and I talked about this a little bit in the Cedric Robinson discussion. They have a way of there's a way that films update. So they take Tarzan, for example. Like Tarzan comes from this incredibly racist like history, and they redid it in, I think, what was it, 2009, something like that, as a cartoon. And I didn't watch that, so I don't know, how racist it still is. But so they try to soften depictions over time or take away the things that are like most kind of problematic. And I think this is just an interesting question in general of like what does that actually do or serve, what is, and it, conservatives get all up in arms and they go nuts of like, oh, you're telling us, we can't look at the aristocrats without feeling like we're bad people, like fuck you, like. So there's that kind of response, but I don't think that's not the thing that any of us are concerned about. It's just sort of like, what does like tinkering around the edges and softening these things and becoming more inclusive and trying to represent different, cultures, whether it's in Kanto or Moana or Mulan or, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like, what does this actually do? Like, what's the function that it serves? And is that in any way, what are the positive and negative aspects of that, I guess?
I want somebody else to go. Mtume, you go.
Well, I think maybe we can ground ourselves in something like connected to the book is one of the things that Dorfman and Madelart pretty much point out is Disney making itself into a kind of normative institution of American ideology, right? And one of the things I think we've seen, and every single person I hear has commented this on some levels, where we have these institutions in America, whether it's Disney, whether it's the Oscars, whether it's the Democratic Party, so forth and so on, that they're too big to fail, or they're too attached to the kind of cultural zeitgeist that you can't let them just disappear or dissipate. You have to rehabilitate them in some kind of way. And, you see these ideas of, which I don't agree with, reclaiming, right? We must reclaim, so forth and so on. Often they say it about things that we never even had. Like I remember when Lovecraft Country came out, that TV show, they were like, we need to reclaim Lovecraft. I was like, I don't understand that as a function. Lovecraft was a racist science fiction writer that we never had. I don't understand why I need any claiming of him because he's from the South. I don't get the logic. So to kind of what Jared is pointing out there, to me, it makes me think about what they talk about in the book, that Disney makes characters that live forever, right? They don't die. They don't if they multiply, it's like a new thing, and then that thing never dies, right? We don't know their beginning. They've always been and always will be. So it's like, to me, that's part of the ideology, is also part of the living project. We can't let Disney go, rather than we reintegrate it, reshape it, wash the history, say, and the washing of the history becomes an example that America can be the best, the most progressive nation in the world, because, we were once doing racist depictions of indigenous people and Asians and black people. And look, we're now we're inclusive. Now you can have a black Cinderella or Snow White or Snow Black or whatever, whatever you want to have, right? And yeah, I mean, that's immediately what comes to my head.
Also, Cowgirl or Cowboy or whoever, Carter, also has a big invested interest in bringing Disney back into, I guess, Black audiences and saying that they are, as you said, progressive. And I don't know if my details are still correct, but I do remember before 2020, I thought there were like Chinese sweatshop conversations around Disney, some other racist depictions, losing of subscribers, and then the Cowboy Carter, or I'm sorry, the Black is King, like whipped everybody right back into Disney's grip. Not to mention Beyonce is flooding the streets of Atlanta right now. But I think this fabricated, or this Wakanda version of Africa and race relations is still kind of there. And then on top of that, like, and we talked about a little bit, like the worker is still exploited, if not even more hyper exploited in the Disney spaces, just as much as they were before. And that conversation, like, I wish we could like sit down and talk with some people who actually illustrate for Disney and see. I mean, maybe Mtume, you might know somebody, but see what type of environment they're in now, and then compare it to even what we read in this book. I think that would be fascinating.
We need some whistleblowers.
And I had somebody reach out after yesterday's conversation who said
it might be the same person, Jared, reached out to me as well.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe
interesting, because something
maybe for the future,
yeah.
As you all are saying, it is a current, and I'm trying to think if I said it out loud yesterday or not, but I think one of you mentioned it, that Disney is fully proprietary. So once you sign on to work for Disney, none of your work is your work anymore. Everything that you create, draw, design, write belongs to Disney. And it is the wildest contractual agreement that I think I've ever seen, that like no matter what comes out of your brain, it's Disney's. It's not yours anymore. It's Disney's. And so that's a fascinating prospect when you think about like why workers are presented the way they are in Disney films. It's because workers are what they are at Disney. Like they are the company. They don't have any autonomy. They don't have any rights. I understand. I think it was also in the book that there was an attempt at one point to unionize with the AFL-CIO, and everyone got fired. So like, there is no effort on the part of the company to be a space where workers can feel autonomous, can feel like they own what they do, can feel like they can say whatever they want to say. So I'd be very curious about the person who reached out to you both.
I mean, this is big. I mean, we get whistleblowers, people getting recognized on planes. It's all kinds of stuff. Like the show, this collaboration is doing big things for folks. So we look forward to
That was a wild experience. Side note, y'all. I was getting off the plane the other day, and one of the flight attendants was like, "You're Renee. I thought that was you." And I was like, "What?" So
You
shout
two
out
got
to
that
her.
ring.
I didn't, we were like deplaning. So it wasn't, I didn't have time to like say an appropriate like hello and all the things. But it's always nice to know that when I'm up at 2 o'clock in the morning researching and making spreadsheets and making lists and creating the data set for us to use and stuff, that it's actually useful for people.
If I can, just to add a little bit to what Jared was raising as a question, I just want to show one other example from the book that I think, if I understood you, addresses some of the question. I really liked. I mean, this whole chapter on I forgot what it's called now, the colonialism part of the book. But when you ask this question about why is there about this expansive inclusiveness in these productions, I thought of this part of the book where they say that this is a form of exploitation is not all. A wigwam motel and a souvenir shop are open, and excursions are arranged. The Indians are immobilized against their national background and served up for tourist consumption. The benevolent collaboration figuring the Disney comics suggests a form of neocolonialism which rejects the naked pillage of the past and permits the native a minimal participation in his own exploitation. And then just a little bit more, they part of what is done, as they argue in the comics, I think is done in the versions with some of these films, and this again expansive inclusiveness, is that the past is criminalized so that the present can be purified, and its real traces are effaced from memory. So when people are watching Moana and whatever else, there is still this suggestion that these are at best differently civilized people, and they're still attached to the same stories and with the same standards in place. And then the idea is that there is this, again, inclusiveness. It becomes like, oh, whatever would have created those antagonisms that we kind of have a vague feeling about today, that's all in the past. Look at how everything is different. And then I also kind of wonder if it wasn't, I don't want to give them too much credit, but I'm like, to what extent is this like the use of inclusiveness designed to encourage what at least I see so much of on YouTube, which is the go woke, go broke media criticism that white nationalism disguised as media criticism, where all of this blackening and browning of Disney is and gender and feminizing of Disney is just in a way to reignite a white right and to give them something to feed off of and feel justified in their concerns. It just feels like it works so nicely hand in hand. They get riled up, and then you get a little bit more fake inclusiveness to cajole the liberals, and then everybody can kind of continue on in without there being any real shakeup or intervention. But
yeah. I mean, one of the things that's interesting is to maybe talk about a couple of different examples of what, or how I think this function works a little bit. So 2016, you get Zootopia, right? Which is like right after the Mike Brown and
On my
Tamir
list.
Rice and Freddie
On my
Gray,
list.
right? And it's a propaganda film, right? For kids. Like it's a little kid propaganda film. That's what it is. Like, but it has all the, and it, everybody, there's all these different animals, again, like to Mtume's point, like it's not, they don't use people in this particular type of work, but the animals are supposed to represent kind of like different racialized tropes and things like this. You have the fox, you have the bunny, like and yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's a pro police, film. So you get that at that time. The other thing is just sort of like if say the film is good, like say they create something and you know I haven't read criticisms of like Encanto, for instance. I'm sure there are good critiques of it out there, but like say we think it's a great film, right? And it's like so that brings more people into Disney Plus, which well, it might have something, Andor may be the best example, right? Something that we all think is like well made, right? But the success of it like leads people to subscribe to Disney Plus, and what's like the biggest products on Disney Plus? I mean, the Marvel, aspect of Disney this point has to be their biggest, like I would think their biggest product. And that has a huge contract with the Department of Defense. And there's all of this placement of military technology and, all kinds of imperial ideology that we could discuss within, Marvel. I mean, that would be something Todd Stephen Burrows would definitely lead us in. So, it's like even if there's something that's good there that we like what is that opening the door to in terms of the Disney vault? And I think even I don't think that their cartoons, their like animated movies anymore are a kind of um I don't think they have the same. I would be very curious looking at like their GD, how much money that they make, how much of that actually comes from animated films at this point. I think it's still obviously a successful genre for them, but when you look at the mass of what they produce nowadays, most of it is not that, and maybe never really was, but certainly not to the extent that it was, in the 1960s or 50s or whatever. So, yeah, those would be some thoughts.
So I found that list of all the Disney movies that I sent an email like 20 minutes ago. It took me a while to find like the actual list because you're right, Jared. Like it's kind of all over the place. But in searching for that list, I found a reference to like historical Disney because they have that vault and they have this whole thing. What I was amused by is when you go to that initial site, like it makes a big deal about how Disney really like promotes its history, right? Like it's real big on history, and I thought that was so amusing considering our conversation yesterday and how they completely like disregard history and how things came to be. Now, I think you're right. I think they've made way more like real life, like real people movies than they have animated movies. Like when you just scroll through the list, which I think I was also surprised to realize. But there's been a real shift. There's been an attempted shift to make it appear as if they're doing something differently now than what they had been doing, but it's all still cloaked in the same thing, right? So like Encanto, which FYI I love, not even gonna lie, it's a great great cartoon. Me and Nazi are big fans. But Encanto, the entire story of Encanto, which includes parents, right? Which includes people who work, which includes people who are struggling with money because they're trying to maintain their house. Like it has all the things, right? But it's all in a magical house, right? Like the whole thing it all takes place in a magical house. So it's almost like these things exist, but not really, because it's all happening in a magical house, right? And so, and the family is essentially making money off of the magical gifts of the children.
Yeah, there's no working again in it, right, Renee? Like, I was trying to think. I don't think
No,
that there's any
no,
labor
like
relations in it all. Yeah.
no. Well, what they have is you have the town that grew outside of the house. So in the town, you have people who are merchants, right? Who are selling wares, selling flowers, selling goods, like that type of thing. But it's also like there's no I'm trying to and it's been a while since I've watched it the last time, so I'm trying to think if there's actually like a monetary exchange, like money for goods, and I don't think there is. Like, I don't think you ever see like someone giving money and getting something back in
No,
the movie.
the family's situation was clearly tied to the powers, and
Right.
but without explanation, because folks have got to have known who have watched yesterday, but Madelard and Dorfman talk about, there's literally a point at which they reference what I oddly see it come up in atheist debates all the time now, a discussion of new technology mimicking in real time magic. So there is no economy or labor, there's just technology.
Right.
And I'll just leave it there. But you got, if you
Right.
saw yesterday's show, it'll sink in. It'll.
And Jared, what you said about the timeline for Zootopia, I don't think.
Oh, sorry, Renee.
even-
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Sorry. ChatGPT says animated revenue is 5 to 10% of Disney's empire at this point, for whatever that's worth.
That's wild. But what you said about the timing for Zootopia is crazy, because I don't think I had realized, even though I knew when Zootopia came out, like, yeah, it's exactly that timeline, but I don't think I had put that together. And the cartoons take really long to put. I mean, I don't know how much longer they take now. Like, I'm sure they take less time now, but they used to be like, it used to be a really long process to do a full feature length cartoon. And so I'm curious now, like, was that timing? Was it intentional? Like, you had to wonder about all these things, because Zootopia is 100% propaganda, 100%. But Zootopia also, interestingly enough, includes workers, includes regular people, includes parents, right? Like, but that's my point. Like, they've made this shift where it's kind of different. So if you're not really looking at it from the sense of like, wait, it's still the same venture, right? It's still the same sale that they're making. You may think, oh, well, they're doing things differently, when they're actually not. It's just, it's just colored differently. It's not really doing anything different. Go ahead, Mtume.
Yeah, to kind of add on to your point, one of the things that I knew from my time in Hollywood and in the acting world is you have a lot of ex-cops, ex-CIA, ex-FBI, ex-national security, so forth and so on, people who work in Hollywood. Like, they say, the book National Security Cinema, which Jared Ball, which JB put me on to, that I read some years ago, talks about this. What you have a lot is people who maybe were doing work. They were the person who was like the go-between when, Captain Marvel needed to do their deal about getting Air Force planes. And they develop a relationship. They decide to get out of, whatever agency they were in the government, and then go work for Hollywood as a kind of person. And you see a lot of these people within there. And they broker deals, because the other thing that is very, very, very prevalent is these conversations with the government to not just Marvel, but to Disney broadly. We want this kind of, messaging. I mean, this is where we have to bring back that Walt Disney letter to Nixon. I mean, we can see that as a precursor really to what ended up happening much later. If the police are like, look, we need a better messaging, I'm positive someone who knows someone, and these all people, they hire security. I mean, look, I mean, this is similar. Who is it? Was it J.J. Abrams? I don't want to get it wrong, but didn't he do a big APAC fundraiser? It's one of them. It might be him. I could be wrong, but it's one of those major people in Hollywood who did a big APAC fundraiser, right? And it might not be J.J. Abrams. I think it's the other guy. But I'll look at it after I'm done talking. They're part of these, it's a big consortium of people who work together and they do that. So influencing in the movies, absolutely, especially for the kickbacks, the things that they need, the access. They're like, hey, if you put that in this one movie, then when you want to do, whatever kind of superhero film, we'll let you have a bunch of tanks, which is really how the deals go, right? Or really directly with the Marvel movies, it's really, if you want access to that, you have to, we need script approval, right? If you want to use these things, we need script approval. We need the ability to kind of usher in things that are directly our messaging, all right? So it's one other thing that I thought about is because Marvel, we talked about, is a significant part of Disney now. And one of the things that I noticed, I remember when I was watching Iron Man 2. That's the one with Mickey Rourke, right? And where like the whole kind of storyline is, the Starks, yes, they're these great inventors, but there was another inventor from a Eastern European Soviet, bloc nation, right? And he probably had some of the better ideas and things like that. And he gets, he's now become a crazy person. They love that. The people from these other lands, they become crazy, and he wants to kill Iron Man and kill the world and all that type of shit, yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. But what I think is important about that is still the history of just wiping out production. One of the can be insidious things about Iron Man as a character is the fact that all great things of technology that come from his company just come from his own thinking, right? They all are produced from him, and it goes out. You never see workers. If you see a worker, you see like an assistant scientist, but mostly, I also think the other big thing is Jarvis, and I credit, Jarvis with a lot of our AI obsessions right now. Everybody wants their own Jarvis that they can have. I'll keep it 100%. But with that being said, like production is basically is amped out. It's always robots making everything. He has no line, he has no assembly line, nothing, right? No one produces this stuff. But then the person that's supposed to be the rival and them kind of acknowledging the history that possibly the US did some nefarious things and robbed some people and did some things. Yeah, but it's always an individual genius. Like they're down with acknowledging individual geniuses around the globe, right? But a large scale exploitation of the global South, counterinsurgency in the Eastern Bloc and Soviet and communist nations. No, that didn't happen. Yes, we probably had a couple of guys that we took some stuff from. Yeah, we harbored a few Nazis. I know, but hey, we needed to get our we needed medical research. It is what it is, right? And that's and Madelart and Dorfman talk about that, I think, at an earlier stage, right? It's kind of when they talk about you're able to acknowledge certain past things, but you have to then make the new thing a kind of normative good relationship, right? Because at the end of the day, Iron Man has to kill the guy because he's a crazy, even though Iron Man might have turned him crazy, like or the Starks might have made him crazy. Same thing with Killmonger and Black Panther, right? I mean, it's the exact same thing. Why it pissed me off, right?
Yeah. So I actually want to ask a question, Mtume, about. So we all kind of, and we said this quite a few times, of how ex-CIA and policemen are all in these films and writing and all these other things. But then as I think about, like, so one, being in a crimogenic society where like the actual terrorists become either the police and the military or the leaders of the police and militaries. But when we think about like how emotions can be like weaponized, you have fear, disgust, you have the element of surprise, and even us who have maybe more of a critical lens sometimes who have the trained eye and critical lens can be pulled away with our emotions if peaked correctly. So my question is like, when you're in those spaces, what is the narrative to justify why the police or the military or the CIA is there? Is it that narrative that like they've actually seen the world in an objective way, or they've seen the good, the bad, and ugly, and they're like more, I guess, equipped to tell these type of stories? Because again, like our ideas of what the cops and the police and the military, all these people are, is like they're and I think Jared and not Mtume, I'm about to call, what's the brother name? Why am I blanking his name? Osami, Ori. Jared and Ori was talking about how like the police are like the truth tellers and everybody else is separate. So I wonder if even among those people, when you were in Hollywood, do they think that they are there because they actually know the real and they see the real and they have the right vantage point or real experience? Like what is the attitude like?
I mean, yes. Like, look for example, the obsession with true crime and documents of people who were involved in things. The idea that the detective, the hunter, right, and there still undergirds, I think, belief in American society that cops, even if they're a bit excessive, and we're going to get into this when we do Imperial 80s, because this is something that I think was really informed in the 80s. Movies like Lethal Weapon, Die Hard, the use of excessive force becomes justified because the threat is so large, right? We can't combat the insanity that's out there in the world with someone who is docile or by the book. You need Martin Riggs, you know, who will break it. You need I forget Bruce Willis's character's name in the Die Hard movies, right? So when these people come in, even if they do have that track record, like I remember I was in a movie, in a TV show episode with a guy who was an ex-undercover, right? He became an actor. I forget his name. He played a lot in The Sopranos a little bit too, and it's like a kind of like a goon. But he was undercover. He told me, and he would tell these wild stories in like when we were like not on set, right, or we were like off camera, and like some of it was so excessive and wild, like almost inappropriate to let me know like he was doing the stuff, drug deals, setting people up, that are whole types of stuff, right, but they loved him. He was like a darling there to them because he had seen the actuality, right? So he becomes this kind of example. But because he was part of law enforcement and everything in the outskirts of it is seen to be so evil, he becomes a kind of an angel, or an angel with a dirty face, right? Kind of, really. Is what he is. So what you say is absolutely correct. I think it's they do need them and they like them and they accept a certain level of barbarity because they've been there and they had to kind of there's so many movies like this, right? There's a movie called Narc with Ray Liotta and Jason Patrick. Busta Rhymes in it for a minute. I don't want to get too much of the movie, but that movie exists to justify, even though they say ultimately he was wrong, Ray Liotta setting up two black people because he wanted someone else to get the pension for a guy who went undercover and got on drugs.
For real, that's a head scratcher. You are not wrong, Jared.
So yeah, it's just the logic. It's just the logic of it all.
I do want to say so. This is kind of to jump back to something, but this came up in the book, which Walt Disney personally financed an animated documentary propaganda film during World War II in 1943 called Victory Through Air Power. And folks can still find this. Like, it's on YouTube. You can watch it. And like this is at the period, for folks who don't know the history, like it's not that there wasn't use of planes in warfare prior to World War II, but the like bombing like civilians and being creating calculus around like strategy of how many civilian casualties are acceptable in bombing and so on. I wouldn't play a lot of this, Renee, because it's probably going to get you guys a hit. But
I don't know if we
people
can
should
be any further demonetized than we already are.
That's
but
true.
we don't want them to take it down. So fair enough.
Yeah. But people should look at it. I mean, because if you talk about like where we are with Gaza, today, like that becomes justified in part, in World War II. And like it's not the United States wasn't the sole proponent of that. Like Italians, I think, actually were some of the first to propose it as this, that we can bomb civilians in certain amounts, and certainly the Nazis did as well, right? And so it's like it's not just that, but it comes out of these very like fascistic calculations of and you still see this logic. I mean, there's all this stuff that's been created in terms of, Jared probably knows this better, but like how many civilian casualties, quote unquote, are supposed to be, acceptable, right, for the elimination of an enemy combatant and so on. And certainly this is stuff that the United States always like pushed the envelope of. Certainly Israel has pushed it incredibly far in this war in terms of like bombing hospitals and schools and shelters and all of these things that historically are supposed to be exempted. I mean, Obama bombed a hospital or whatever too, so it's not, but the scale and the degree and the constantness of it in this war is extreme. But I just think it's important to note that, because again, like Disney is treated as this apolitical thing, and like this is a Disney movie about like strategic aerial bombardment of like Germany. It's pretty wild. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that up again, and I guess it's partly to say I think one of the difficulties, like maybe it connects over to the Jungle Cruise thing a little bit too, is like when you have these histories, what does it mean to just sort of like move them off of Disney Plus, or to then create these like more inclusive cartoons from the same thing? It's like you're still the same corporation that did that, and like Jungle Cruise until like 6 years ago had this guy Trader, was his name Trader Sam, who like on the ride he's holding up heads of pygmy Africans, like he'll trade you a couple for like one of yours, right? This is like 6 years ago, and then they take him out, right, and the ride is still goes, and so it's just, I don't know. I think that a lot of times these cosmetic changes, there's a tricky thing with them, because on one level, like, should children be subjected to going through a ride where that's still a thing? Like, absolutely not. But like just getting rid of it doesn't actually, there's no reparation there, there's no restoration, there's nothing transformative either about just removing what you were just doing.
I'll say something real quick, but yeah, just to this point, and I'll be very quick, because it's all attitude. All we have to do is change our attitude, not the material relationship between people, the exploitation. I mean, we're making clear points, and this book makes clear points that Disney aided in the expropriation of these nations. They aided in it through propaganda, through mass culture, and the destabilization of these nations, everything. So all they have to do is just change their attitude, and all is good. They have to do nothing material. Maybe a DEI hire and make someone an executive or the president of the company. That's about it.
Jared, did you have something? The other Jared.
I just wanted to go back to quickly Geechee's question and just put a little bit more of an aggressive, assertive, sort of affirmative point to it. That well, I think there's a way you could read the history of not only mass communication but Hollywood specifically to see that that shows a particular conscious colonizing, weaponizing, public opinion shaping mechanism that so when you talk about when the question about the involvement of former police or military in the creation of this or that and the authenticity that they're said to bring to it, that may be the polite way it's discussed, but the reality is, I mean, they're there because it has been clear from really the beginning. And I think it's interesting that in that book, that Alfred and Seckert book, they make the point that the name CIA is first said in a Hollywood film at the time when it's still the OSS. So they make this point that it was sort of called for. The CIA was actually called for into being through a Hollywood film, so to speak, but with the idea that that's what it's here for, to play that function. So if former to the extent that they're former this or former that are involved, it's specifically not the authenticity they're meant to bring to it is like it's a weaponized authenticity to say we're not only giving the reality but saying we're justified in this, we're supposed to be here, this is the right thing to do. Even if there's a bad apple, the institution itself will self-correct. And so I just wanted to
no, and that makes sense. And so there, I have so many notes. I'm not really sure, like, but I did, and this is all J-Dub's fault. I did go back and watch a Ducktales, and I skimmed through it actually. Like I skipped every couple of minutes because I just wanted to see enough to kind of resolve in my head that it really was as bad as it had been. And it was as terrible as I expected it had been, that I just didn't know when I was a kid, like it's this terrible. So just to focus on DuckTales specifically, because DuckTales is its own hellscape, because it was a TV show that was on syndication, 3 seasons, every afternoon, like racing home to watch DuckTales, had the snazzy music. And so some things that stuck out to me as I was watching this, and it was the first episode of DuckTales, if the notes were correct in the thing that I watched. So one, that Donald Duck does not speak English, right? Like it takes a while. As an adult, I'm sure, like as a kid, I felt like I understood everything that he was saying, but as an adult, it took me a minute to like catch on to Donald Duckish, right? Like it makes zero sense until you start like really, okay, he's actually saying words. It's just like the way he's saying the words that makes it so hard for you to understand. But the 3 boys all speak very clear English. Right? And so the first episode, he's like on his way to a job interview and they're trying to get him out of the house to go on a job interview. And so then you start thinking about the fact, and this is something that I've heard said multiple times, that every time it's said I giggle, which is that Donald Duck never wears pants, right? He's in a full like suit jacket, shirt, tie, like the whole thing, and no pants. So we're just gonna remove that whole thing. The uncle with his Scottish brogue, which like how? It just feels like this very random, like we're gonna just assign him this brogue and call him McDuck so that people can like associate it in some way, which is fascinating. But also in this particular episode, and I totally forgot about this, that there was this competition between Scrooge McDuck and Duck Glomgold. Do you all remember this? So Glomgold is the second richest duck in the world, right? And him and Scrooge are always at ends to try and be the duck with the most money, with the most, right? And so in this particular episode, they're going to go steal wealth from somewhere else. And Glomgold has hired Donald Duck to work as part of his crew to beat Scrooge to this place so that he can get the biggest jewel and be the richest duck until they figure it out, right? What is fascinating about Glomgold is when they introduce him, it's through his employee film, like his, his welcome to the company film. And it's Glomgold Industries. And Glomgold Industries, I can't even stop laughing. This is so fucking outrageous. So Glomgold Industries, their whole theme, like this is what he tells them, this is what our company is. It is to take an idea, make it your own, but do that better, faster, and cheaper. Right? And he's basically like, you employees, you are here because you are the cheapest labor that I can find. Like the whole thing is this fascinating look at how CEOs and capitalism works and how they treat their workers. And it's all in this like 3-minute span in the very first episode of DuckTales. And I was like, wow. Like, what is happening right now? And then there's this whole thing with them going to steal the gold from somewhere else. And it's not about actually making anything or creating anything or the work. It's about these two rich people using other people, their underlings, right, to steal the wealth from somewhere else. And who can get to the wealth first so that they can be the owner of all the wealth. I was like, damn it, Jared Ware, you sent me back to
It's crazy how those, I mean, I am like you, like I felt like, oh, it was probably not like this when I was reading the book. I was like, I didn't like they're talking about Duckburg in the book. They're talking about all the characters from DuckTales. But I'm thinking, well, he's talking about comics that are written in the 1960s or 50s. Like, it's probably not the same as what I saw in DuckTales, because I loved DuckTales. They used to show DuckTales to us in my elementary school when we had rain out of recess. Like, if we couldn't go outside to play, go into the library and watch DuckTales. So, like, that's how accepted and, like, I mean, it's treated that by public education, elementary school, that this was just fine to show to children when when you can't go outside and have recess, right? And I think that says everything about how normalized and accepted it was in 1989, 1990, etc. And you watch it, and every single episode is about exploitation and expropriation, basically, and all to like make the exploiters and the expropriators look like the best people. And I think a lot of that also has to do with Disney, like who he was as a person and what he wanted to promote, even though that show happens after he's gone. um you think about too, like Disney's history of just, I don't want to use the word stealing, but like what they do is they mine the public domain for stuff that's free to them, and then they make it theirs. And basically, so like Winnie the Pooh, Snow White, like all of this stuff, in some instances they licensed it, or they paid somebody a little bit of money or maybe a decent amount of money to take their properties from them. But in a lot of instances, they just took stuff that was like, Grimm's fairy tales or old versions of, you know, fairy tales, children's stories. And then once they hit the public domain, they could get them for free. And then they make an animated version of it. And then the version that everybody knows is their version too, right? And so then beyond, people just associate those products with Disney, when in reality, and this was always used to piss my mother off, it's like she's like, there's this long history of this stuff, which is not necessarily a good history in a lot of instances, but that is prior to Disney taking it. And so it's just such a fascinating thing too, of like that, there's a way people think, I think about the public domain as this kind of, well, everybody can use stuff from the public domain, but capitalists with a lot of money are the ones that have the ability to take stuff from the public domain and make a ton of money off of it. So it's an interesting thing in itself, and is connected, I think, with, the overarching, exploitative structure of Disney.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know how we get away from it, even in looking at the things that, just if you just look at the outside and how the telling of the story has shifted a little bit, right? Like, how do we, it's always the same problem, which is, how do you get people to not do essentially what the writers of the book said people were going to do, which is like just dismiss you as crazy people who are just complaining about stuff. It's just entertainment, blah, 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 blah. Like, how do we get past that part? Because I went through that list, and I mean, first of all, there were cartoons that were mentioned in the book, like the Three Caballeros and Unidas Amigos, that I didn't realize, like, I'd never heard of those, right? And so I read the titles in the book, and I was like, oh, okay, like, these are real movies. And then when you see the full Disney list, you're like, oh, they actually recognize that these are like, it's on the list, like it's still there, which is wild to me.
I watched Three Caballeros as a kid too. I just want to say that.
So see, and I don't remember that one. And it's, I mean, maybe I just don't remember. I don't even remember it as a title, right? And so, but then, things that they talked about in the book that have shifted. So like in the book, they talk about how, women are fully dismissed by Disney. There, it's full patriarchy. There's no room for women to be anything other than like these like sidekick marginal characters that pop up and don't really serve a purpose. But here it is now, like that there's been this real shift to having like these female heroes, right? So you have like Moana, and you have Raja and the Last Dragon, you have Brave, right? So you have these full out movies where the female character is the brave one, right? Mulan, right? And so, but then when you really look at it, you're like, well, shit, like Mulan was, but it's like her whole bravery was because she joined the military in place of her father, right? So the whole thing is like a nod to war, right? Like, same thing with Brave, like, it's all about fighting the people who were there, and her mother's the bear, and the whole, you know what I mean? So the mother's there, but not like, it's still like the mother is there, but she's a bear. She can't communicate. She can't, she's like bouncing into things because she's trying to get them to understand what she's trying to say. No one understands her. Like this whole idea that this mother figure is unable to fully communicate in a way that makes sense to anyone else, right? Like all these, like,
but they also have no impact on the rest of the world, from what I remember either. So it's like you can say, yes, what happens with Moana, and she's wonderful and great, and yeah, but it's within the context of her people specifically. There's no challenge to the point of Dorfman and Madelart. There's certainly no challenge to the colonialism that they would have experienced in relationship to the rest of the so-called Western world and all of that. And then you just walk, so to that question though, what I think we can do is what we are doing with our use of media and our encouragement of criticism and involvement with certain forms of political activism. But I don't think that we should have illusions beyond that. the only way to change the dominant narrative as it's constructed in this media environment is to actually seize political power and produce it. So I just want, like, but what I like about this book, and what I would like to see, and maybe as this, as a form of this collective for future programs, we could do what Dorfman and Madelart are teaching us. That is, the book is titled "How to Read Donald Duck." It's like Marxist logic. It's meant to teach you how to think and apply to your time and space, etc. Maybe we could take, because when, for instance, when Musa is asking what the panel thinks about Disney ushering in the era of the extended cinematic universe, again, to me, maybe we could anyway, we could maybe assign some films and just in a couple months or whatever come back in this formation and apply. But just very quickly, again, from the book, I mean, just something that is instructive in terms of the work we advocate here. The reading likely obviously needing to be updated in terms of the specifics of the media product. The way to read it is, I think, taught well in this book, that by projecting certain forms of or incorporating, as it would be today, certain forms of protest, certain forms of protest politics, like feminism, or just how some would frame it, inclusion, and so on and so forth. One, to a point, Mtume, you made in yesterday's program, Disney did not, of course, get this light bulb on its own in terms of this strategy, which is to convert protest into imposture. This approach of dilution, to banalize or to make banal, that is, an unusual phenomenon in the social body and symptom of a cancer, in such a way that it appears as an isolated incident, removed from its social context. Maybe a good way to read Moana, so that it can be automatically rejected by public opinion as a passing itch, so that whatever protest politics might be in a Moana or something else would just be dismissed. Oh, we scratched it. There's a woman conquering. Yep. All right, let's move on and keep it moving. But anyway, just the point being that How to Read Donald Duck is a prescriptive tool. It's a manual for engaging media. And yeah. By the way, Todd was supposed to be here, but Todd be faking when he get these I mean, I'm just gonna leave it at that.
Todd hit us with the I gotta finish this project. I just want to real quick, because Geechee, I know you're waiting to say something. Don't lose your thought, because this is not gonna take long. I just want to point out that yesterday Jared Ball tried to be all over Jared Ware about his highlighters and that he needed an intervention. And I just wanted to point out to everybody.
I might need one too. It takes one to know one. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Just saying for the record.
All criticism is autobiography, right? That's what Kwame Ture told us Bertrand Russell used to say. So that's what it was. I was snitching on myself. I was confessing.
He would step across the line. Habitually. He's a habitual line stepper.
Go ahead.
So I actually, as Renee was asking that question, I think I was struggling with feeling like maybe I have a bias on how, and I think me and Jared talked about this before, but like how important this work is. And I know, like, I probably since high school was interested in journalism and media, but then I think even coming upon Jared's work and seeing like how important it is, but then also see how people either dismiss it as not real political work or whatever other stuff. But then when I think about public perception and then shaping public perception, it's always argued, even with Barks, that like, oh, they're not shaping public perception, they're responding to the time. Same thing with the rappers. The rappers are just responding to the time, they're not shaping it. And then it's like, and even as we start talking about Afrofuturism or any other, storytelling skill, it's like it's claused in, the protections for these narratives are claused in, and all of our responses is like, oh, it's just music, or it's just whatever. And but we can explicitly see that like the pro-cop propaganda starts when you watch fucking cartoons, like, and then so you realize why when Bad Boys come on and you want to emotionally connect to what's happening in the scene, like you're really being oriented to like, yo, cops are not all that bad and they have good intentions and they're regular people. And
even Scooby-Doo and them with snitches, little detective ass snitches ruining everybody's schemes.
Not Scooby-Doo.
He was
But
the
this
crime,
is-
he was a crime dog
Yeah.
and everything.
But this is valid, and it's something, I mean, it kind of points back to what I was saying, earlier about like how, because at the same time, like, fucking real life sucks, yo, right? Like, I tell people all the time, like, every now and again I see someone who's just like lottie-dottieing through life, like they're not like, they don't have a clue what's happening, they don't watch the news, they don't, like, they're good, like they're going to work and coming home, and they're not invested in any of this stuff. And every now and again I'm like, damn, would life be easier if I just like didn't do this, right? Like if I just like didn't pay attention and just la-di-da through my bubble, and you know what I mean? And I mean, I'm not that person, right? Like, and this is not to say that I've never had phases in life where I just did whatever, right? Like I wasn't always like balls to the wall, paying attention, watching news. Like I'm not, when Naz was little, I was totally like outside of the scope of a lot of this stuff because I just didn't have, I didn't want to invest, like I didn't want to invest in it, right? Like I wanted him to be a happy baby. I wanted him to eat. We read baby stories together. Like, like I just didn't do this stuff, right? I went through a phase where I was very, very interested in shoes and bags and clothes and buying shit. And, and I learned it takes time, right? Because you realize when you're sucked into the capitalist project and whatever it is that kicks you out of the project, right? Whatever it is that lands you in a space where you realize that you had been sucked into the project and you were just living within it, right? And you're like, damn, that shit is for the birds. Like, I don't want to be in the matrix anymore, right? But we're still in the matrix even when you don't want to be in the matrix. Like you can't escape it. And it's hard for people, I think, because people want to be entertained, right? Like they want to just go to the movies and eat popcorn and enjoy the movie and not like think about, what is it that's really happening? Like people were really mad at me about my take on Kendrick Lamar's halftime show, right? Like people were pissed at me. Like you just, like he's trying to do a thing. And I'm like, okay, but what is he doing? Like, what did he do that's actually going to change anything, right? And now dude is up against charges, right? Has Kendrick Lamar come forward to like provide him any support for simply raising a flag in the, like, you know what I mean? So, and I live in my
Y'all don't know what that man is doing behind the scenes.
right.
Dare
right.
you? You don't know what Kendrick, you and
The
Kendrick.
best way to do it is silent, man.
Right.
He's bailing out protesters in Oregon. You didn't know. It's already happening.
Oh, so so you have all these contradictions. Like I still watch Disney movies. Like I thought Soul was great, right? Like Inside Out, another one, like great. You know what I mean? Like there are all these, and it's a contradiction because I do watch it, and I'm well aware that what I'm watching, there's more to it. But I just want to enjoy it in the moment that I decided to watch it. And I wonder if sometimes like my pursuit of like trying to pull the wool off, if maybe I need to allow people to embrace the entertainment more, but not to forget that they're being entertained by something that is seeking to continue to propagate. Am I making sense? Like, is there a way to balance this so that people don't, like, you know, like Jared watches soccer. Football. Sorry, I watch American football. Jared watches football for everybody else. You know, Jared Dub, I know you're a basketball person, right? So like we all have our contradictions that we live within. So how do we find the balance? Because that's the thing with Disney, right? Like it's overwhelming. So how do you figure out the way to allow people their contradictions, but to just always remind them, like, remember, we are not controlling this ship. And until we are controlling this ship, everything that you are being presented is an attempt to control you.
So I think that takes me back to, I explained before when I used to like facilitate Bible studies for like a plethora of different people. There was atheists, there were Hebrew Israelites, whatever. One of the tenets was like after engaging everything, tell us the historical message that you pull from that, the moral lesson, and then doctrinal lesson, meaning like what is it telling you to do, or what would you do afterwards? And I don't know if there's something like that, a framework, like every time you engage media, it would be interesting to hear these three answers to this thing, and then that can probably start the conversation around maybe, I guess, arguing like, is this historically accurate? And then how do you, as the Jared's talked about, how do you know what do you know? And then where do you get that information from? But again, maybe the response will be like, well, I didn't get none of that. I just came here to escape or whatever I was doing.
So I have a couple things. And I'm not saying you're suggesting this, Renee, but I hear this from a lot of people that, you know, people who don't engage in politics are happier. And I actually don't find that to be real. Anecdotally, a lot of people that I know who choose to ignore things are quietly or sometimes very prominently miserable. And they're often confused why they're miserable. I know someone who does not engage with politics, but is depressed all the time. And I actually suggest to them, if they actually would have engaged deeper in politics and actually get in there and do a bit more, they actually might feel less isolated. I know for myself, it actually has helped personally, right? Because I haven't had like in my adult life every year, every day been engaging in work like this. I had a couple of years where I was like, you know what, man, I'm just gonna be into like this type of art and just be an artist and all that type of stuff. But I was very miserable. I did not enjoy that. Now to the point of like watching this stuff, it's interesting for me because one of the things that I had to begin to evaluate, and this is just not with movies, is my relationship to pleasure and understanding what pleasure actually is. When do I get the highs and the lows? It's almost like eating, right? When you eat junk food, you think about it, right? Maybe when you get the first taste, you'll feel really good, but sometimes you'll have that shoot down or the drop. So I had to begin to kind of think about my relationship to that. But what's interesting for me is, Rocky 3 was on the other day on cable, and I put it on. And I have this relationship with Rocky 3 because I really enjoy watching Mr. T give Rocky the business. I just enjoy it. It's fun, right? And then Mickey admits that all of Rocky's fights have been completely like he's a paper champ. I just love it. Like it's just great, when Clubber Lang goes up on there and talks crap about him, and it's like the best thing ever. And then when Clubber Lang beats him in the first time, I love it. It's like fun. I watch it. And then Apollo comes in, who I can't stand.
That's when I turn the movie off. That's when you're supposed to stop the movie.
Exactly. JB's with me. I hate Apollo Creed. Because to watch Apollo make Rocky into a black man to fight a black man who's supposed to be Mr. T. Mike Tyson. Let's be real. He's supposed to be Mike Tyson. My brain can't compute. I have what Matthew Diawara talks about, right? Like I reject it. Like I have a rejection, right? I can't accept it. But I allow myself that. I go into this space and I enjoy it. I enjoy this analytical space of watching it, seeing it like, this is bullshit. And I actually find enjoyment in looking at this little clip. But then I know my limits. I'm with JB. I stop it once, like, you know, Rocky has to stare into the black male faces and he start doing the two-step. I'm like, I'm good. I'm not watching this. But I'm
and
like,
he's running backwards on the beach when he's
bro. And when he
that.
beats Apollo, bro, in the race. And the fact that Apollo, I mean, it's even worse than Rocky IV when Apollo is seen as the great patriot.
And James Brown is used in his Nixonian height
in America. But yeah, and then Gorbachev, you know, claps for, you know, liberal democracy.
And his whole and the Black Death, so the white man can transcend. And then, I mean, to your point about the third movie, he becomes even blacker because he gets the whole Black Apollo Creed training crew, and they like adopt him.
They're all black.
And then I mean, it's and then as we were talking off air, go ahead.
Well, I just want to finish this point. But I do find enjoyment in that analytical space. There's certain things I can't do it with. I do have movie limits. I can't watch certain things. They make me very angry, and they tick me off. But then certain things I'll watch it, and like my pleasure, I think, has become in looking at it and saying, oh, look at this. This is some weird stuff. But then I also allow myself my limits. But I want to make two last points that are in the book. That because Musa brought up that point about the extended cinematic universes that I think is really important. And I think it's part of the older tradition. The first one is in the conclusion, there's a line. It says, underdeveloped peoples take the comics at secondhand as instruction in the way they are supposed to live and relate to the foreign power center. There is nothing strange in this. In the same way Disney expels the productive and historical forces from his comics, imperialism thwarts real production and historical evolution in the underdeveloped world. The Disney dream is cast in the same mold which the capitalist system has created for the real world. So by, to me, extending these universes, creating these multiverses, they're now even saying multi-dimensionally, capitalist realism, imperialism is actually the normative of the entire universe, right? This is what this is, right? And this is important, right? Because a lot of this stuff was developed in the Cold War, right? We're not in the Cold War anymore. And then the end of history comes, but the end of history, you know, even people who are pro-capitalist see the kind of mistakes, and even someone like Fukuyama has to walk it back, right? So they have to make these new narratives, right? And create multiverses and things like that, and say, no, like really what's happening is like it's a metaphysical process that we all live in, and it has fits and starts, but you know, it all kind of comes back to the end. You know, Thanos can snap, you know, and destroy everyone, but you know, it'll work itself back, right? And they want to keep that normative, right? There's another line, and I'll end off here, where he says, but once it has failed, the child rebels, demanding restoration of the betrayed values and the old hierarchy of domination. With their prudent takeover, their mature criticism, the youngsters uphold the same value system. Once again, real differences between father and child are passed over. The future is the same as the present, and the present and the same as the past. So, like,
and just quickly, I just want to add to that point. This is in the context of them saying, if I remember correctly, of them talking about how in the concept of the first world, the so-called third world are the children. So when you're watching these, they're talking about this relationship with the third world, so-called, is not going to change. We're not. So don't get it twisted with all this inclusiveness. That's how I was seeing that.
And it's also an extension of the conversation. Sorry, Mtume, don't forget your thought, but of the extension of the parent teaching the child to be like the parent, so that when the parent passes on whatever thing they're passing it on to themselves, right? So it's like this continuation of the same thought process.
Right. And so if you put it on two levels, right, one within an extended universe, like they've left the actual world. They've now gone into dimensions, right? Like the entire all of metaphysical existence is this, right? That's all that is possible. So it's important to them, right? They need to stay a normative, and the only way they do that is, you know, by making it the entire of all existence forever, past and present and future.
Yeah, no, thank you all for all that. I mean, I think one of the things, to back to the question raised by Renee and just kind of building off the points that Mtume and Jared made, is just that it's, you know, we have to recognize that this media work is doing something to us, right? Which I think is the part that people who say, hey, just let me enjoy, like, just let me be entertained. Like, I know it's kind of messed up, but like, I just want to have fun and go watch this. And it's not, all of us watch stuff. Like, it's not like we don't watch stuff and be entertained by it and, you know, whatever. Like, that, of course that happens, right? Like, we're not saying to people, you know, don't watch anything. It's that when you take Disney at his word, or at its word, that it is apolitical, right? And that it is just, you know, an innocent space for children, and that, you know, it purposely avoids politics and all of this, you know, then you're accepting something that's false, right? You're accepting that, like, the way we remember Ducktales, Renee, is because we accepted that premise as children, that like, this is just entertainment for kids and don't read too much into it, you know? And so then when we go back and watch it now, the way that we're politicized all these years later, we can see clearly in every episode, these are all the messed up things that it is doing to children. But it's the same thing, that conversation I was having with my son yesterday before I did this, where he just could not even understand, like, oh, you know, his assumption automatically was like, we would be using Disney as somehow alongside killing capitalism, which he knows that that's the title of the show. And so he knows that I don't like capitalism, but he's not, you know, he's still young enough that he doesn't really understand what capitalism is, right? And all the ways that it is taught to him already as a 7-year-old. And so, you know, if we accept the villains, right, that they make in these films, and the things that they villainize and criminalize and so on, right, and we accept the good guys in these shows, like, they're teaching us stuff. And so I think it's really important, that work, to be able to point out to folks who don't think about things in those ways, like, it is teaching you something, to the point that Geechee was making earlier too, about, like, you know, reading passages of the Bible, like, what is actually in here? Like, what do you make of it? What do you think it was trying to say? You know, what does it make you want to go do now that you've read this? I think that's a really good framework to sort of think about all of this work. And so I do think it's important. By the way, I saw a comment in the chat from Rad that not to forget Hamilton, which is a Disney production, and the whole
Wow.
Lin-Manuel Miranda industrial complex is another, which I know Mtume wants to talk about.
Can I tell you, I've never seen Hamilton, and if I have
haven't either.
If I have anything to do with it, I will never see Hamilton. Like, I
You know what I did
want to
do?
avoid it at all costs.
I went and found, and it's online. It's not a great copy unless it's been an improvement, but I found Ishmael Reed's play in response to that.
I have the text of it up here. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And yeah, and again, I just want to pat myself on. I was hating on Hamilton from the jump. I remember a friend of mine at the time said, "Yo, they're using hip hop to teach about Hamilton," and I was like, again, that's my point about the flawed hip hop narrative, and fuck that guy. This is crazy. If I can though, I just want to add on real quick to that question that Renee asked, and that Jared, you were just also answering, that and I want to again shout you and Dylan out, because that similar question came up in one of your recent discussions, and I thought the way both of you talked about, I mean, it was, I called it an improvement to the Vernon philosophy. It was yet another, it was just an adding depth to it, that that we're not going to be able to avoid, and this is the sort of the point of Madelart and Dorfman's book here. You're not going to avoid absent a revolution. So I just want to, you're not going to avoid what they're doing here. So similar to what Mtume was saying, what I liked also from the conclusion, one part of it here, that the bourgeois concept of entertainment and the specific manner in which it is expounded in the world of Disney is the superstructural manifestation of the dislocations and tensions of an advanced capitalist historical base. In its entertainment, it automatically generates certain myths functional to the system. It is altogether normal for readers experiencing the conflicts of their age from within the perspective of the imperialist system to see their own daily life and projected future reflected in the Disney system. So again, I'm happy to be checked on this. As I interpret it, it's sort of going to the point that you're making, Mtume. It is creating in the all-pervasive environment. And that, to your point, Jared, even if there are those, like I'm fine. I don't advocate it, but if you are at a level where you can completely unplug and you're not watching any of this silly shit I watch on a regular basis, salute. The problem, though, is that everyone around you is. And that was sort of one of the reasons why, when I'm always asked, well, why do you watch this? And why are you so always criticizing this and that? Starting with my students, I can sit here and be like, I'm not watching nothing. They are watching it. The myths and the narratives that are projected through these products, whether it's through a direct media, a particular product or not, they're, that is, my students and others are being immersed in that world. If I try to act like I'm not, or try to dislocate to a certain extent, or try to, that's fine. But then I think it hampers my ability to offer the analysis and the critique that they need. And that's what I thought you, Jared, and Dylan did so well in making that point, that we have to watch it. We have to engage in some of the stuff that we don't want to, and push some of our limits, to Mtume's point, so that we can offer an analysis. And then lastly, to Mtume's, you also said, and I think Musa mentioned it in the chat, like, there are aspects of this that are both fun and enjoyable in this garbage that we get. Like, I get a sugar rush when I was chatting. I got a smoothie waiting for me. It's technically vegan, but it's got more sugar in it than a soda. I'm a drink it and I'm gonna enjoy it, and but then there has to be a critique of it, and there has to be a recognition of why that smoothie exists in the first place. Means production. So, but then I think that we anyway. So I'm just saying, I think we have to be a little bit less engaged in sort of self-harm and self-critique around our engagement with these things, recognize, and then be able to just be willing to be critical of it, and then having a political analysis of it, even as I'm watching silly stuff, it makes it enjoyable for me. I have fun with that. So that point about people that ignorance is bliss, I don't believe that either. I think there's more fun in being aware of what's being done, and having an ability to have an analysis of it, and be aware and to build with others around that analysis. So,
yeah. One thing I'll add to everything that's been said here is also, we cannot expect people to divorce themselves from media if there is not alternatives. Right now, I'm not saying that the left or the radical front has the ability to compete with the mass cinematic and now, cinematic movements that happen, and the mass media apparatus that is. But, I do think cultural production from a revolutionary end is also an answer. And I do think that political parties need to really step up their relationships with this. And artists who consider themselves to be radical, communist, whatever the label is, need to start stepping into the histories of people like Madelart and Dorfman and the Third Cinema Cats, and reading Fanon's on national culture, reading Cabral's work, reading, Tashom Gabriel, and looking at their analysis on how to create revolutionary art. And actually, let's leave here. Go to what Mao was doing. Talk about the Chinese, their relationship to it, revolutionary Russia, all the stuff down through Latin America. The list can go on and on. There needs to be a kind of investment in that acknowledges bourgeois society, and beyond that kind of protracted movement towards bringing people into that within the community, right? What the Black Arts movement did, right? What the Harlem Renaissance, well, the at least the radical wing to the Harlem Renaissance. There were some non-radical wings, but you know what I'm saying? Like those type of things need to also happen, right? As an alternative to that, right? The real underground, right? That's not just a financial label or a real independent, right? I mean, Glover Rocha has a line. He says independent film is a political issue. He does say that. Like, he believes independent cinema is a political issue, right? Because you cannot really be independent if you are stuck by capitalist rules and means of production and how you're going to be delivering your work.
And the other part of that too is, you can't be in pursuit of the capitalist project while being in pursuit of giving people truth, right? like you're gonna have to give all the I want to make money stuff up. So I feel like this is where the real issue is that, we've talked about this, and I find myself saying it in other places, like, you can't be radical, rich, and popular, right? Like, it's not, them three things can't work together, not in this society, in this structure where we are now. So part of it is also like, how do you navigate living in a capitalist place and needing to eat, but also wanting to do the thing that needs to be done, right? And so, like I would love if at some point our channel, like our collective, and obviously, like, part of the joy in this work is being able to work with Mtume, who, by the way, yesterday I realized I wasn't like an actual full Patreon, so I fixed that yesterday. I don't know why, I just noticed it. And so, how do we as a collective work together? Because maybe if we can pool our resources in some ways, we can find ways to create things that do the thing that can't be done because of capitalism, right? Like, I want Mtume to make the documentaries that we're always texting about, right? Like, how do we support that happening? How do we push Jared to write the next book? Like, how do we manage this in a way to counter all the things, so that we do present something in its place? Because, and I'm just blanked on Jared or Mtume, which one of you said, part of the problem is that there's nothing that exists in its place either, right? Like, there isn't a real, there's small spaces where things happen. Like, there's a whole, I'm going to blank on, there's a streaming service that's all it's all legit. Like, there's a newscast in the mornings, and he does the dick of the day and the rich dick of the day. And I'm blanking on the stream. Do you know which platform we're talking about, Jared?
You're talking about Means TV? Is that
Means
what you're talking
TV? Yes.
Yeah.
And so Means TV exists, right? And they have a ton of really good stuff, but I don't know how many people know that Means TV is actually a thing, right? So how, there has to, in acknowledging that we are living in a system that intentionally prevents us from doing these things, how do we work to push these things to actually happen, to counter Disney? Because Disney's just, oof.
Yeah, so Means TV is a a streaming service that they've created. It's like an app like Netflix.
Oh, so that wasn't.
That
What I showed wasn't.
No, that's it.
I think
that's it.
that's
their
like
YouTube thing,
advertising
but
them. Yeah, yeah.
got you.
It's just promoting what they have as a bigger platform that you can subscribe to. I do think, yeah, I think that Renee, like what you're laying out, is one of the tasks that I think a lot of us think about a lot. And it is the kind of like, I mean, I had somebody the other day put a comment in the conversation we had yesterday, which is a valid question, which is like, what do we propose, beyond being on YouTube and having a Patreon, which like we, and I mean, obviously, like on one end, I never quite know how to take questions or comments like that, because on one end it's like, well, no, we're like actually telling people to join organizations. Most of the people here, maybe all the people here, are part of an organization in some respect, right? And so on. And so like, it's not that we're advocating like, hey, everybody get on YouTube and have a Patreon and like this will somehow lead to the revolution. Like, I don't think anybody here, thinks that. But there is, I think, to what you and what Renee and Mtume are talking about, is a real need for like collective investment, collective projects, because I mean, I do think Black Liberation Media has been a good example of, as an effort to do this kind of work, but to bring people away from just being the isolated creator or a couple of creators with their podcast or their YouTube show and their Patreon and like their little tiny bit of ad revenue, if they have that or whatever, as the model for, left-wing cultural production, which is always going to be also very limited by, yeah, like we have microphones, we have a camera, we have a computer and a connection to the internet. That's not exactly the setup that like best situates us to make stuff that's like really compelling to folks too, in terms of, especially when you start talking about like making documentaries or short films or, different artistic production that is in the vein of what Mtume is talking in terms of this history of actual revolutionary artistic production, in third cinema, in Soviet Union, in China, in Cuba, etc. And I think that there's enough people that we can like, I think it's just a matter of people putting the intention and getting beyond our own bourgeois, sensibilities in certain ways about what it means. I mean, there's a whole thing, and Musa Springer talks about this really well, about like, the artist or the creative or the media worker, like thinking of themselves as this kind of individual who, like Walt Disney, imagines himself to like create all of this, even though Walt Disney didn't know how to draw, right? Like, so this is the reality, is that we've been fed this myth of the individual genius creative, that we can just go alone and do it ourselves. And the capitalists are like, no, we need this big corporation to put all this stuff out and to really do it at scale. Obviously, we don't want to do it in the same way that the capitalists do it, but it does need to be done collectively, and also with resources coming together, probably from other places than just our own pockets too, and even the pockets of the people who watch it, so yeah.
And there's also, and I'm trying to remember, was this Jared, was this Musa, who were we talking to? Somebody was saying like there also needs to be, and this is aligned with what Jared you just said, like a recognition that like this idea that everything has to be polished and the sound has to be right and you have to have all.
No, I got that from Mtume though.
Okay, I couldn't remember who we were talking with, and that doesn't have to be the case. Like you can present a really good product and it may not be polished in the way that like, capitalism tells you things need to be polished, but it could really be a good product that actually helps with people's learning and understanding and being able to like align with things in a way that maybe right now it's like tinkering in their minds, but they just haven't quite like fully grasped it. Does that make sense?
I mean, one thing I learned touring films on a festival circuit is there's always going to be people who are so just indoctrinated, for lack of a better word, into kind of bourgeois aesthetics that like they're never going to accept anything. Yes, there are there those people. 100%. They want the flying ships, they want the big explosions, and they want to see Denzel or someone famous in front of them. But I'll be honest, I encountered plenty of people on these circuits, and I've been in festivals around the world, right? Like, who don't really care about that. They actually just like the engagement. They like it even better when filmmakers are actually present, because these people don't get to meet Steven Spielberg or Ryan Coogler, right? And honestly, like, yeah, seeing him on a YouTube interview or seeing a tweet from them is not as much as seeing some young filmmaker or some filmmaker in general present their film, right? Talk about it and having audience with it. There is a power to that. And so to the grand point of it is that my thoughts, a lot of this is where I go to artists, and artists need to have a bit more of accountability as well, is letting go of their bourgeois wants of really using art to become socially mobile to basically have more capital. And a lot of artists just don't want to be honest about that, right? Even the ones who want to call themselves political or radical, they just don't want to be honest about it, right? And then some of them also will just want this need to be able to be the individual and not have to be accountable to anyone except themselves, or maybe be accountable to their funders so they can pay them back, right? But they don't want to be accountable to an audience. It's why a lot of artists, though I think this is changing with the younger generation, a lot of artists for a long time would not join political parties. There was a lot of that. They wouldn't, because they did not want accountability. And I find that to be largely a bourgeois, liberal disdain on arts in the West, personally. I think that's really what that, and I had it for years. I had it for over a decade. I'll be honest with you. I felt it was part of my DNA as an artist, right? To like have the ability to be separate from things. I now find it to be a gross miscalculation, and really was just liberalism living within me, right? I had another point, but I can't remember it at the moment. But like, yeah. Oh, but the other thing that I will say is, yeah, to the first point is, yes, Renee, the sound, the picture, but also like the space. Like, it might just be the filmmaker traveling to DC, presenting their film, on a screen, like JW helped me do at Making Worlds. To me, that is valuable. Having those things happen, right? And just having these kinds of motions happen and have them happen within the community. And shout out to Chad Murdoch. The episode that I did with him on Within Our Gates is coming out soon. We're having these kind of extended conversations, and one of the things, we don't really talk about it heavily in our conversation, but we're going to, is a kind of like degrowing of the expectation of movies, right? Of what movies are. And there are a lot of cinema movements currently outside of this country that are into this. America, because of our excess when it comes to technology, isn't as much. But in the independent film eras, there was a bit of an acceptance of it. I mean, of like the 80s and 90s, there was a bit of an acceptance of it for a while. So yeah, that's what I have to say. But I mean, yeah, I do think it's very possible.
I just want to say thank y'all for including me. This was great. I'm always trying to stick my head above the water with y'all intellectuals. And maybe as we create this media, we can tell people what we're gonna make them do, tell them why it's important to do it, and then what is to be done after they finish engaging. Because it seems quite often, as Jared Ware was asking, that doctrine question, like what is to be done, like I don't think most people had that question. I mean, the answer. So creating media and film to direct people to what to do, more than just join an organization, but actually step-by-step things to do would be great. Because even as yesterday I was at this meeting and these people talking about clean air, and then they talking about like the most thing you could do is vote. And I'm like, well, vote for what policies? And they was like, well, the Republican. I said no, but what policies? And so, not being able to tell people exactly what you should be doing is probably an advantage I think us on this side would have in terms of creating some type of thing. So I look forward to that, and I'm gonna catch y'all another time.
Thanks, Geach.
I just want to say quickly in response to that. I know you're going to jump,
Peace,
so it's,
Geechee.
but thank you. But I think this is something that artists are trained not to do, also, right? And there's a specific reason for that. Is that within, especially in the United States, like there's a history, a CIA-backed history, and everything else, of suggesting that art is not supposed to tell people what to do. And of course it does, right? Because we just talked about Ducktales and all the things that it's teaching kids what to do and how to value and etc. Everything that you read is teaching you some kind of values, or things to look at as positive and things to look at as negative, right? There's politics in all of it. But somehow as artists, we're told not to do that. And you're especially told not to do that if you are somebody on the left, right? And I think that is something we have to break out of, is this idea of like critiquing things as being didactic or browbeating or whatever, and building some stamina for people to like kind of and analysis to weather those types of critiques and say like, no, actually it is important to share how we think these changes come about, or what we think this new world should look like, etc. Rather than just doing everything in subtle ways that could easily be misread or misinterpreted, which is what a lot of times happens.
Peace. Yeah, I mean, you're right, and it does happen a lot. You get like, and this is why things like the halftime show, like you get these like subtle pretending as if you're like giving this thing, right? And so people in their desire to feel like they've watched something or participated in something that has a deeper meaning, that we start doing the whole egg hunt thing. And then you have like the 8,000 Instagram reels about why you missed this secret hidden meeting that was in the background of the scene in Sinners that told you this thing, right? Like it's just like it's never ending,
don't forget,
right?
Mtume's previous point, the same one that brought you Sinners and Wakanda brought you Creed and
Right.
Creed and Creed.
Right. And
why did you pick up Creed? Why did Creed? And then even Stallone, Stallone even got cut out of that because he doesn't own the rights to Rocky apparently. So he got cut out of that whole Creed thing.
Yeah. He said he didn't like the newer script, but they were like, you can't stop us.
Don't like it. You can sit over there with Jared and Mtume.
By the way, just shout out, Imperial 80s starts on Tuesday, and every week Mtume and I are gonna do an 80s film, and you'll get some of this great.
Wait, I gotta talk to both of y'all. You didn't. Wait.
Oh
wait,
yeah.
Wait.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Whoa. Wait.
Yeah, videos will be on Millennials Are Killing Capitalism, and the audio will go out through within our gates.
Yeah, we'll have the post recording.
I feel like Mtume set me up, and you didn't give me the full.
Well, no,
it's a whole different level of preparation. Like it's a whole, you know what I mean? If Jared is involved, it's a whole different. Like he should.
You should have seen Mtume's notes on forgeries of memory and meaning. They were just as in depth as mine, if not more.
Man, that was a very dope. That whole set that was all dope. I have since started, but I had never read Robinson's work like that work. So that was really dope.
And it's funny, I mentioned, I might even mention it on the live stream, Donald Duck. I was one of my rereads was inspired by reading Forgeries. I said, I need to go back. I can't remember specifically why.
I think it was because of, we were talking about other work that deals with imperialism within Hollywood, and you were like, well, how to read Donald Duck, which I think was what led me to, okay, I'll read this, and then
yeah. But also, I started this a little bit, so you can see it. This book, Workshops of Empire. I have to go through it a bit more specifically, but to the point that Jared Ware was making about this idea of being political and being like politically very, very in the forefront about your work, in the work, is, it has a lot to do with that. The Iowa project, this idea that better art is stuff that's either not political at all, that's more human or universal, and these are all quotations, is BS, right? Or if it is political, it's hidden, right? It's done in metaphor and so forth and so on, right? And it's so interesting because those same liberals will tell you that Bertolt Brecht is like one of the great theater artists, and there was nothing subtle about a Brecht play. I mean, they were the most communist, anti-capitalist, anti-fascist plays you'll ever read, right? So it's, a lot of it has to just do with this project. They want people to not revolt, to not rebel, to not embrace rebellion or a hard political line that you name. I am this and this is what I'm doing. They don't want people to do that. They want to say, no, being kind of wishy-washy is actually the better thing to be as an artist.
Oh man, I got another one. Is Missing on your list?
Yo, you know what? It's funny, JW. We should do Missing, because I like Costa Gavras, but that film is interesting in seeing his changes, I think, a little bit politically. Because have you seen like his earlier films like Z?
I haven't, no.
You should see Z.
I saw Z. Z is interesting. Z is interesting. Yeah.
And State of Siege. But then Missing is the film he does. Yeah, we should do Missing, with Jack Lemmon. Sissy Spacek, right?
I think so. Yep.
Sissy Spacek. Yeah, we should do Missing. I forgot about that.
Can I show you all before we leave? There was that article. It's not that deep, but there was that one article about Disney and that I said we would bring up today, and the CIA. And I know it even this article, which is very short, says there's more to it in their podcast. So I'll put this in the show description. But just one of the things I Googled real quick the other day and thought was interesting, just to jog memories. But Disney World and its tangled web with CIA ops. The short of it is that Disney got Wild Bill Donovan, which is wild. I didn't remember that part. And Paul Helliwell, who ran CIA operations in Southeast Asia, to help Disney acquire the land, create shell corporations and fake cities that would give governmental support to the development of Disney World. And then literally moved employees into these new cities, Bay Lake and Lake Buena Vista, so he could control the voting and get the permits and all that other kind of stuff. So there is that at least overlap there, that the same people who were involved in all kinds of chicanery with the CIA and did help get Disney situated there. And then as this story says, the conspiracies don't stop there, but you would have to hear the podcast that I did not check out, but that to hear more about secret, super exclusive clubs, theme park grounds, and deaths covered up by Disney, all alleged in this article here. But there is at least the overt relationships there to get the land and the shell corporations, and we know the CIA loves doing that to facilitate operations. And yeah.
That's wild.
And again, to that previous point
about, sorry.
No. I mean, but I think that I think we do need to be reminded of I think it speaks also to the more aggressive, assertive piece to this, that those in power recognize the value of this sort of soft power, neo-colonial approach that can aid certain projects, in addition to just making a ton of money, of course. But yeah,
listen, this was,
I can't wait for that 80s series. That's gonna be dope.
out. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, even though Mtume set me up, but it's all good. It's all good. It's all good.
Well, I got to sign Mel Gibson movies, so how bad could it be?
Come on, this is a community effort here.
It is. Listen, and there's a lot, like, you know, on our little text group for Review Crew, we're always like, did you see this? Did you see this? Like, that sneaker documentary that I watched on the plane
watch that
was wild. Wild. Jared, I don't know if you've heard of this. It's what's the name of it again? It's like
Sneakers in the title, right?
Sneakers is that. Hold on, I'm about to, because it's important enough that I make sure, because I want everyone to watch this so that you can all be incensed by the level of sell that is happening with regard to sneakers in this documentary. So it's called Sneaker Hustle, and it's 2024. So it's not an old. This is a new documentary, and it walks through the history of how sneakers became a capitalist project. And it's a whole thing with the sneakerheads. It talks about Kanye. It talks about how they used Michael Jordan and Larry Bird to really do the like. I mean, about Jordan being the first like NBA player to wear black sneakers on the court. I mean, it is a fascinating dive on the history of sneakers as a capitalist project. But it's all done in the positive, right? Like, look at all these people making millions off sneakers. It is wild. So I need everybody to engage. Maybe that could be the next millennial / BLM conversation, because I like this like back to back. We get a lot of time.
Yeah, it's fun.
About stuff. It's fun. I appreciate that Jared W like goes along with my madness when I be texting him like, what about this?
Anytime, Renee. Yeah, no.
Yes,
thank
Jared
you.
Ball is stuck. He ain't got no choice. He gotta be here on Saturday.
Locked in, heading towards 100 episodes. So everybody, it's a good time to remind everybody to like, share, subscribe, support the Patreon. Get you some of this fly merch. You know, coffee tastes so much better in a Saturday's mug. And even when it's cold and you've been sipping on it for 2 hours, it's really still really good. It's still really good. So yeah, no, this has been great. How to Read Donald Duck. Please, everybody, please go support Mtume's Patreon. I'll make sure the link to that is in there as well, because he's got a whole bunch of great supplementary notes and discussions, and there's tons that still could be excavated from it. So yeah, and
people who, you know, there's also an opportunity for people who join to add in what you see in perspectives. People have added some really interesting things, threads that I didn't even think about, you know, some people to think about. And, you know, as I keep reading, I have more thoughts as well. New things come. So we're on chapter 3, like 4 more chapters, but it could even exist after that. So please, you know,
I'm about to go backwards and start from chapter 1 and read all the notes and stuff. And if you're not already subscribed to Millennials Killing Capitalism, I don't know what's taking you so long. I don't know what the delay is. I don't know why you're not already supporting. I don't know what's going on over there. But I can say I am successfully a Patreon of all 3 of these people on the screen. And, you know, sometimes it's weird because I'm like paying my friends, but, you know, it's all good.
Rather do that.
Definitely
it'll all circle back. We're circulating dollars here. So it's
let the dollar circulate and let Patreon take 2% of it or whatever.
Take 2% of it. and we,
charging us to be friends.
Basically, and Ricky in there talking nonsense. I'm a paid Patreon for her too, so let's just be clear. Like, I support all the peoples, man. I try to, and I'm jobless, and I be supporting all the peoples. I be pulling my pennies together. So, look, all we can do.
And your birds are out doing mine today too, by the way.
I know the window's open because it's like just cool enough outside that I could turn the air off. So the birds. I live in tree line.
It adds a little bit of that Disney ambiance. There's always some little birds tweeting in the background.
Birds tweeting. That's right. That's right.
Facts.
What's that Disney movie with the older brother? The one of the ones that they've canceled. The very famous one that they like you can't watch anymore, and like they have like the animated birds, and it's the older black man.
Are you talking about Song of the South?
Song of the South?
Song of the South.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. We should take the last minute and just talk about Song of the South. They don't show that one on, but you can find it. You can find it
on YouTube. And like I found it like it's like they having like 10-minute bursts.
Yep.
You have to be able to watch it.
Because you gotta right. You can only take so much of the racism. I mean, you could just see it. You're not even hearing anything. But there's the bird. Yeah, this is that's wild. That's so wild.
That's wild. Jared about to get us shut down. Look, we're about to get a letter.
I mean, now how racist would that be for Google to shut us down for playing a Disney racist ass clip for 2 seconds?
It would be poetically racist.
Even Google's not that racist.
I love the title. It's like, is this racist?
Right. Is this right? This is a black man with some birds and the bees.
I will say that's one of the funniest things that you see with the like right-wing reaction to the like Disney stuff is like them trying to be like, oh, it's not that bad. Like, and then you go back and watch it and you're like, oh my God.
No, they are flipping out.
Someone said that to me about Revenge of the Nerds. They're like, oh, it's not that bad. Go back and watch it. I was like, I watched that movie and I said, oh my God, it's worse than I even thought it was.
It's even worse. It's even worse when you go back. It's even worse.
All this stuff is worse when you go back and watch it as an adult. You're like, oh my God.
And there's so much stuff. And I know, my doorbell's about to start ringing. There's kids coming to the house today. But like, there's so much stuff that like when you watch it now and you're like, wait a minute, did I just not see it then? Did I just not did I miss it? Did I not? But then then I remember, just like you said earlier, Jared, like, we were in it, right? We were also like blinded and living within the project and not understanding that we were being propagandized, right? So like everybody talks about like all these movies like Weird Science and like, I mean, all of them, they are wildly racist, sexist, inappropriate, like all the things. And
but like when you're a kid going to the movies, it is an unconscious experience, even when you see some of the credits, to think that no, that kid on the screen wrote this.
Right.
We that's why this How to Read Donald Duck, one of the reasons it's so important. It's reminding this kids thing, this teenage thing is written by grown-ass adults who have their own interests. Right. So like that's why when we go see this stuff, it's like we might even have a moment of like, I remember a lot as a kid in the 80s. There's these moments of
yeah.
I feel like I can't put my finger on it, but looking at my white friends like why are you laughing? I don't find it as but it's just this amorphous thing, and that's why I think that's why these efforts are important, because I didn't have a YouTube channel to go to where somebody could say, these movies are whack, and whatever you were feeling in that moment, Jared, is justified.
Wow.
So yeah.
All right, y'all. I gotta go before the doorbell starts ringing. But I appreciate the time. I will circle back about, let's do the sneaker thing next if folks are good with that. And we'll figure it out maybe a couple of months from now so people have time. I know y'all got to get the 80s thing rolling. The documentary's not long on the sneakers, but it's
the review crew list isn't even finished. So like
I know. I just keep adding to it, but we got a lot, we got a lot.
It's all good. It's all good.
Look, the goal is to keep giving people info. So let's do that.
Please, everybody, check all the links in the show description that will be there shortly. And peace, only if you're willing to fight for it, like Fred Hampton used to say. And we'll see you next week, this time for more Saturday with Renee.